Hi and welcome back. In this video, we will get acquainted with the three different kind of cell references, and they are relative reference, absolute reference, and mixed reference. Understanding these cell references is important before we start learning VBA so that we know how these references behave when we are recording a macro. Each one of them behave differently when you copy them across a cell or you move them across a cell. Before we understand these cell references, I would take this moment to also explain what a cell reference is. A cell reference, or also known as a cell address, is made up of two components. It is simply a combination of a column letter and a row number that identifies a cell in a worksheet. If I talk about, let's say, G3, then it is the intersection of column G and row 3. So this is G3. Understanding this is important when you're working with cell references. So let's start with relative references. By default, a cell reference is a relative reference, which means that the reference is relative to the location of the cell. Relative cell references, when copied to another cell or across multiple cells, will change based on where you copy them. Let's use an example. I have this sample data ready. Let's say I have fruits in this column, and then I have cost per kg and quantity per kg in these columns. Now I want to, let's say, calculate the total cost of the fruits bought, and I want to show the costing in this column. The basic maths says that to get the total cost, I need to multiply the cost by the quantity. So let's do that. I'll click on cell E5 and type the formula equal to C5 multiplied by D5, and then I will press the enter key on the keyboard and I get 10.4, which is the total cost of the apples bought, which is 2 kgs. Now to get the total cost of other fruits, I can either manually type the same formula in all the blank cells below, or what I can do is I can simply copy the formula down. I can do that either by selecting the cell E5 and then pressing Ctrl C and then pasting it below by pressing Ctrl V. This is one way. Or I can simply take the mouse cursor and take it right and on the bottom right corner, and you will notice that the cursor changes to a big plus sign. Simply double click on it and the formulas are copied down. Let's go to cell E5. To see which cells are getting referred to in a formula within the same worksheet, select the formula cell, which is E5 in this case, and press the F2 key. You will notice that Excel puts a colored border around the cells which have been referred in the formula, which is C5 and D5. Now let's check which cells are getting referred in the cell E6. So I press escape, select E6 and press F2, and I see that they are referring C6 and D6. So what exactly happened here? In the previous formula, the formula was referring to C5 and D5, and now it is referring to C6 and D6. The formula was updated to include the relevant cells when we copied the formula down. This is because of relative references. Like I mentioned earlier, relative cell references, when copied to another cell or across multiple cells, will change based on where you copy them. So I press the enter key. Same thing is with this cell. If you double click on it or you press F2, it will show you which cells it's referring to. Same as with this cell. So the formula got updated. Now let's understand what an absolute reference is. When you do not want a cell reference to change when copied to another cell or across multiple cells, you use absolute references. Unlike relative references, absolute references do not change when copied or filled down. To make a cell reference absolute, you add a dollar sign before the column name and the row number in a cell address. Let's understand this using an example. We have already got the cost of the total fruits. Let's bring another aspect into our calculation. Let's add taxes to the cost of these fruits and then find the final cost. So what I will do is I'll add one more column here, or rather I'll copy this so that the formatting is copied, and I will delete these cells and rename this cell to cost after tax, and I make this column slightly bigger. Let's say the tax is 18%, which is mentioned in cell C2, and it is the same for all fruits. So the cost of apple after adding tax, if I have to insert a formula, it will be equal to E5 plus parenthesis E5 multiplied by C2, which is this cell, close parenthesis, and press the enter key, and you will get 12.272, which is the total cost after adding 18% to this cost. Now I want to repeat the calculation for the rest of the cells below. If I simply copy the formula down as I did in the case of relative references, then see what happens. So I'm going to double click on this cell and the formula gets copied down. If you notice, I'm getting some weird results. Total cost is 13.8. After adding tax, it is still 13.8. In this cell, it is 7.8, but I'm getting a hash value error. Here, it is 7, and suddenly the cost after tax is 43.4. Something is not right. So let's go to this cell, which is F5, and let's press the F2 key. And then I will see that it is referring to the total cost column and the taxes, which is fine. So nothing wrong here. I'll again click on this cell and double click on it. And I've noticed that, okay, fine, the total cost is getting referred to. But instead of taxes being referred from C2, it is being referred to cell C3. This is not what we wanted. This happened because of relative cell referencing. We do not want the cell C3 to change. So what we will do now is we'll delete these three values and then we'll go to the first cell, which is F5, and then in the formula bar I will change C2 to $C $2. This is called absolute referencing. Now the address $C $2 is constant. It will not change when you copy the formula to another cell or across multiple cells. Let's test it. I'm going to press the enter key, and then I will double click on this bottom right corner to copy the formula down. And now I am getting the correct results. Let's double click on this cell. Yes, it is referencing to the right cell addresses. Let's click on this. Perfect. It's addressing to cell E8 and C2 as expected. So to make a cell absolute or a constant, you have to insert a $sign before the column letter and also before the row number. Now let's understand what a mixed reference is. This cell referencing style is a mix of relative and absolute cell referencing style. In a mixed cell reference, either the column name or the row number has the $sign. Both of them will not have a $sign, because the moment both of them have a $sign, it becomes an absolute reference. If I need to do a visual comparison, then this is how all the three styles will look like. Now you may be wondering, where would we need such a kind of reference? So let's navigate to the third sheet. I have a sample data ready with which we will experiment. This is the month-on-month sales data for the employee John Doe and Jane Doe. Now I would like to calculate John Doe's cumulative sales at the end of every month. In column F, this is the result that I am expecting in column D. Now we will use a formula to arrive at the same results. Before we do that, let me insert a formula in cell D16 and D15 to try and get our result. In D16, if we use a formula equal to sum, start parenthesis, and then if we select the range from C5 to C16 and close the parenthesis and press enter, we will get the cumulative sales for Jan to December for John Doe, which is the same as the figure that we are expecting. Similarly, the formula for D15 will be equal to sum, start parenthesis. This time it will be C5 to C15. We'll close the parenthesis and press the enter key. And the value is the same as we expected. Now let's compare both the formulas. I'm going to insert an apostrophe just before the formula to convert the formula to text so that we can do the comparison. So I go here, I insert an apostrophe. Similarly, I go here and insert an apostrophe here as well. So now we can compare these two formulas. If you notice that one thing is common in both formulas, and that is cell C5. Both the formulas, they start from C5. That means the cell C5 is constant and it doesn't change. The only thing that is changing is the row in the second range, which is 15. It changes to 16. So my understanding is in the cell above that, which is in 14, D14, the formula should be equal to sum, start parenthesis, C5 colon C14 and close parenthesis. So the formula has to reduce. That's the only thing which is changing here. So I'm going to go back and remove the apostrophe so that it becomes a formula again. So I'm going to delete this formula. We don't need this. Here we remove the parenthesis and we press the enter key and we have got the formula back. We'll select the cell again. This time I will insert a $sign before the C and before the 5 because this is constant. This C is also not changing, putting a $sign here as well and keeping 16 as it is because we want the formula to update when we are copying it above, and I press the enter key. Now let's drag the formula from D16 till D5 and we get the desired results. 284 matches 284, 1121 matches 1121, 2281 matches 2281. If you navigate through all the cells in the range D5 to D16, you will notice how only the row number is changing. So here it is C5, C6, C7, C8, C9 and so on. Rest everything is constant. This is the mixed cell reference. Now, if I have to calculate the cumulative sales of Jane Doe, I will have to use a similar approach. Either I can re-enter the formula in cell K16 and then copy it above, or I can simply copy the formula from D16 to K16. Let's copy the formula by pressing Ctrl C on the keyboard and then pressing Ctrl V on cell K16. The result that we got here does not match with the figure which is shown here. Here it is 3141, but here it is 2968. So what went wrong? Let's quickly press F2 or double click on this cell. The range C5 to C16 is highlighted. Do you know why this happened? Take a moment to think about it. If you figured it out, then yes, it's awesome. If you did not, do not worry. I will explain what exactly happened. If you notice in this formula, the first range is a constant. C5 is a constant. So when you copied it across to this cell, that formula did not get updated. Similarly, here this C is constant. And this row did not change because we are moving horizontally across a row. I will cover this in a moment. So what I will do now is I will delete this formula, go back to this cell, and in the formula bar I remove the dollar sign before the C. I don't want the C column to be constant. I want it to update when I copy it across. Do I need to remove the dollar sign before the 5? No, because we want the data to start from the 5th row. So I'll keep that dollar sign intact, and then I will remove the dollar sign before the C here as well. And I press the Enter key. Now if I copy the formula and I paste it here, I get the correct result. If you double click on this formula, you will see that now it is referring to this particular range of Jane Doe. So I'll press Enter. I will drag the formula up till K5 and you will notice that now I get the correct results. When you're moving horizontally across in a row, inserting dollar signs before a row number will not make a difference. For example, if I type equal to and then I select B1 and then I insert a dollar sign before the 1, it will not make a difference if I copy the formula across horizontally. It will still refer to B1, it will get updated to C1, D1, E1 and so on. In such a case, equal to $1 is the same as B1. Now if I copy it across, you will notice that it is still doing the same thing. In such a case, putting dollar before the row number does not make any sense. However, if we are planning to copy the formula down vertically, then yes, it will make a difference. If you do not add a dollar sign, then 1 will become 2, 3 and so on. See, B2, B3. In such a case, I have to enter a dollar sign. And when I copy the formula down, then it will still refer to B1 cell. In such a case, putting dollar sign before 1 makes sense. Similarly, if you're moving up or down a column, then inserting the dollar sign before the column will not make a difference. It will only make a difference when you are moving across horizontally. In that case, insert a dollar before the column letter. So what we saw here is to change a relative address to an absolute address or to a mixed address or vice versa, we have to insert dollar signs. Now imagine there's a very long formula. Inserting dollar before every column and row in such a case can be very cumbersome. So what can we do about it? I'm going to share a trick with you. Let's go to cell D5. And in the formula bar, let's delete the dollar signs. So I remove this, this and this. Now select the first C5 and then press the F4 key on your keyboard. Did you notice what happened? The range C5, which is a relative reference, changed to an absolute reference. Press F4 again. The absolute address changes to a mixed address with the row as constant. If you press F4 again, the address remains a mixed reference, but this time the column is constant and the row is relative. Let's see what happens if you press F4 again. The address changes from mixed to relative. Pressing F4 again will restart the cycle. The address changes to absolute, absolute changes to mixed, mixed, and then relative. So you can use F4 to quickly cycle between the cell references. A quick recap. In this video, we got acquainted with three different kinds of cell references. The first one is a relative reference, where there's no $ before the column letter or the row number. The second reference is the absolute reference, where there is a $ before the column letter and the row number. And the third one is a mixed reference, which is a hybrid between the first two, and the $ can be either behind the column letter or behind the row number. And we also saw how these references behave when you copy them across a cell, either horizontally or vertically. If you still have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, or you can always email me on support@tamexcel.com. A quick reminder, I will be posting 2 videos every week, one on Monday and the other on Thursday. And if you would like to support the channel, basically if you like the kind of videos that I'm putting up, the way I explain things, then go ahead and drop a like or subscribe to this channel by clicking on the bell icon. And I will see you on Thursday, where we'll get our hands dirty now by understanding how do we record a macro, how do we edit a macro, and how do we run a macro.